Victoria, thank you so much for coming on the show here today, waking up early. I know you've already had the coffee going and everything, so I appreciate you waking up early and coming on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Let's see. I am originally from Southern California, born and raised. Um, Played softball my whole life until I couldn't anymore. So I went to Utah State where I played softball there. Got my undergrad degree in human movement science with an emphasis in pre-physical therapy. And then slowly somehow kept migrating east when that was never my goal. So I got my graduate assistantship at Northern Arizona where I got my master's in educational psychology and then moved to St. Louis, got my first time gig there in the middle of the pandemic, 5 teams plus assisting basketballs, had
Oof.
200 athletes. We created a small little gym out in the garage that was like very weather dependent. And you never know in St. Louis.
Yes.
Then got my first full time with women's basketball. So I was the director of women's basketball at Wake Forest. I was there for about a year. Coach got let go. I got let go. Went to VCU. Was there for 2 years working with women's basketball only, and then now currently at Stanford working with women's basketball.
That's awesome. Love it. Hey man, you can't hate the Midwest. It's just a little bit dicey with the weather. You just never know what you're gonna get. It's not SoCal, right?
Yeah, correct. You literally have no idea what you're getting, and then somehow the humidity comes in, and you
Yes.
just don't know where it's coming from.
Yes.
But I actually really love St. Louis. I thought it was amazing. It's very diverse, unique, and kind of
Yes.
quirky in its own ways. So it was pretty
Yes.
cool.
I love it. I love it. So talk to me, what originally led you to the world of physical preparation? Was it just preparing for softball, or what got you interested in this part of the field?
Um, Originally, I was going physical therapy, and I liked the rehab process with athletes. I
Yep.
tore my UCL playing my sophomore year. Just
Oh,
horrible
wow.
mechanics over and over again. It'll do it
Yeah.
to you. So kind of just understanding what that process looked like and what it took for me to kind of get back and how great my physical therapist was and just the overall encompassing part of return to play. Did all my clinical hours, dove in head first, Logan, Utah, a lot of geriatric patients coming off of ski injuries, big bubble knees. And so after I kind of did my hours and I actually got accepted to a school, I was like, I don't want to do this. I had this pit in my stomach and I was like, this is not what I want to do.
Right.
So I interned at a D2 back at home where I like fell in love with strength conditioning. I knew I always enjoyed the weight room. I always enjoyed getting stronger. I enjoyed getting faster, understanding what the sport needed and how to get there. So I interned because I was like, if I love doing this for free, I can imagine getting paid is probably even better.
Yeah, sure.
So I was at Cal Poly Pomona and had pretty much was an assistant because it was just him and myself and another intern. And we were just rolling the whole time and felt like an assistant, felt like it was a full-time gig and I loved it and could have been there all day had I not needed money to work. So from there I was like, oh, this is kind of where it's going to go. And at first, my parents were like, oh, it's just a glorified PE teacher. And I was like,
Right.
no,
Right.
and so as I started to really get into the career and just head first, kind of got lost into it, just kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah. What's interesting is I had similar thoughts when I was in my undergraduate and then, in my graduate, there was a time where I was like, maybe I want to do a physical therapist because, I felt like that was like a unique space and I love working with athletes, but I also realized like the acute stuff just wasn't for me. One day off an ACL, like this is not fun. But over time you realize, hey, we can kind of blend and merge those two spaces, right? Like good strength coaches want to back things up and figure out, okay, what are these PTs doing so that when they hand this athlete this ACL or UCL or whatever it is off to me, how can I train them and get them back to 100%? So I think that's where, if you kind of know the space and you enjoy it, you can back up into that and still get some of that taste of rehab without going full-blown PT.
Oh, 100%. I think the kind of the light bulb moment where I knew this wasn't really for me was when I would see a patient or client for about a week and then they just wouldn't show up for about
Oh,
3 weeks
yeah.
and then they'll come back in. And mind you, it was a clinical setting, but still it was just like, now we're so far back. And it to me, it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want something more consistent where I know I'll have my hands on every single day,
Yes.
working with them, making sure we're on the right track. So definitely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's start with a question that we kind of had going back and forth before or leading up to the show. How would you define sports performance for women's basketball? Because, like you alluded to, everybody's got their own thoughts. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Unorthodox.
Okay.
Definitely not. I don't think it's funny. I have these conversations in my head all the time. I don't think women's basketball, and you can make the statement for men's too if you need, is a traditional strength conditioning program. I don't think with how basketball is going, I don't think it really follows the parameters of a Nebraska football, Charlie Francis track program, a
Right.
weightlifting, Soviet training, undulating, whatever it is. I think we're playing all year round. Each practice is about 3 hours slash what a game equates to. Actually, probably harder than a game.
Wow.
And we're probably playing 3 games a week from, let's say, November to most teams want to play till April. So you're playing that period. You get about 3 weeks off, 2 weeks off, depending how you did that year, and you're back into it. And that's assuming that you're not playing with your national team, you're not playing with the USA Olympic team, you're not playing with your club team back home. So we're constantly just going and going and going, and then we're trying to periodize and plan as if we've had this off season and then this preseason and then you know what I mean? And this competition, like, are you kidding me? Do you know how many lifts I scrapped because of our competition and our practices? Like, that's not a fault of anybody but the game, right? Like, you have to adjust. I think it's our job to adjust. And so I don't think basketball really falls into those parameters. It's just not a very traditional, the way it is now, not a very traditional sport when looking at a whole annual year, calendar.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I always joke around, like, people tend to think that since we're like strength coaches, that we're all meatheads, and we sort of are, right? Like, there is a time and a place to get after it. But I also joke around, like, I think what most people don't understand is that in a lot of cases, the strength or performance coach is often the one sane person in the room, right? Like, they can take that step back and realize, oh my gosh, what all have you done today? You did skill specific work. You got open run. Now you're here. Like, we're the one person that can take that step back and realize, hey man, you've already trained for like 3 hours today. Like, what am I hoping to get out of getting you in the weight room and like crushing you in there?
100%. And I think with where I'm at right now, buy-in is probably the biggest tool I can have. And not because I want them to follow my program when we're lifting. I need them to come in when we're not scheduled.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like, hey, I every single day I text them, I'm here, I'm in from this time to this time, this time to this time. Outside of lifting, we have so much that we need to do, and they know that I can't schedule it. And I won't, but I expect them to come in, and they do. Like, when we were in Italy this past summer, I had athletes text me to work out at 6:30 in the morning.
Wow.
In
That's
Italy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. And I'm just like, one, sure, I'd like to sleep in, but I'll do it, But like, if they want to work, I'm not going to stop them from working. I think, we try so hard to get them into the weight room and buy into what we're doing, that when they do want to come in, like, you got it, I'm there. At least right now with where we're at, I think it's a huge buy-in for our program and what they want to do and what they want to see out of themselves. So most of them want to go pro, go into the W or go overseas, wherever it's at. So it's like, how can I best prepare you for that? And if that's seeing you every single day because that's what it's going to take, like 100% is what it's going to take. So, buy-in of what Stanford Women's Basketball Sports Performance stands for, and our overall culture is going to be my biggest tool right now.
Absolutely. So this may be hard to answer, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. How often would you say the average girl is seeing you in a week right now? Like, how many times per week?
7 days a week, probably 6.
Yeah. Okay. See, I thought your answer would be like that, but please explain.
Yeah. So right now we're off. We're on a quarter system. So we got back from Italy the 28th. Coach gave them off till the first day of school, which is September 23rd. So they don't have to report till the 21st, I believe, because we have something on the 22nd. But some of them are in right now, and when they're in, I'm seeing them pretty much every single day aside from like Sunday. They come in, scheduled 9:30. We're going to have lift conditioning, so that's going to go to about 11. They eat, hang out, come back. We got mobility stretching, any type of mobility work that we need to do for another 30, 45 minutes. Make sure we're eating, check-ins. They're out, and we do that every single day.
Yeah.
So
it's just so interesting, right? And obviously you are quite a bit younger than I am, but I just think about what things were like in the 2000s, right? You got your two maybe 3 lifts a week. It's scheduled, exactly what you're doing. Maybe if you're smart, you're deviating from the plan a little bit, but it's just cool to see how much it's evolved. And now it's not just like, hey, we're just going to go and bang weights every single day, right? Again, time and a place for that. But hey, we're going to come in, we're going to do the mobility work. We're going to do the things that help make sure you're feeling good when you get on the court. So it's just really cool to see the evolution of this space over the last 20, 25 years.
Oh, 100%. And also, if you ask the athletes, they think I'm old. So it's amazing. I just had
old soul.
They're like old head, and I'm like, I'm young, okay? I'm thriving.
Yes.
But no, I completely agree, and credit to the coach for trusting me and really pushing the athletes. Like, go see Vic, go see Sauce, go AT as well. It's just it's great buy-in. It's great. They enjoy it. It's not a very rah like intense weight room. We're gonna do things really, really well, and we're gonna pay attention to detail. You guys are gonna feel good after that, and I think that's another
huge
thing. When they come in, I'm like, where are we at? They give me a scale. When they leave, I ask the same thing, where are we at? And 8.5, 9 times out of 10, they always feel better leaving. Always my goal.
Yes.
And so it's definitely been a shift, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love it too. Okay, so what do you see the role of a S&C or sports performance coach playing in an athlete's development?
I see it playing as much or as little as that strength coach wants it to be.
Okay.
I think I love this question because I can rabbit hole, but I also you let me know or you cut me off.
No, you're good.
I think I vouched when I got this position. I vouched to have women's basketball only. There was another sport with it, and that wasn't to negate any other sport at Stanford. Every sport at Stanford is extremely successful. It was with the understanding of how much time and effort that I'm going to put into every single athlete in the program.
Yeah.
And so I told the coach that, and I said, just buy into what I'm asking. And she said, you say less, like, here, let's go. I think personally, I probably feel like I have too much say in their development. I think that's just my ego to keep pushing me to do as much as I can for them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm gonna keep doing that till I burn out, until I'm done with it. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
Full stand, full go. I love it. But to the other end, I think there's other strength coaches where it's like they're gonna be successful with or without you. So it's like, if that's your approach, that's awesome. But that's just not what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do as much as I can, however I can, in any aspect, whether that's, hey, let's just go grab coffee and let's talk about, whatever's on your mind on campus. Let's do a check-in. Let's play your favorite music in the weight room, because as simple as that is, somehow it just gets everybody going. Or athletes want like a completely individualized, structured program that's tailored to them during season because they're going to play 35 plus minutes a game. Okay, let's do it. You want mobility every single day. I mean, it was the same thing at VCU. I had our top 3 players coming in probably about 5-6 times a week, whether it's rehabbing certain ailments, making sure that they stay healthy, mobile, and feeling good, or whether it's doing extra conditioning. They know that's what they need. They know it's what they want, and they see results, I think, to kind of push that progress forward. And that's all I can ask for, because, full circle, to quote one of my athletes, they said, "This ish really works." And I said, "Indeed it does." I said, "It's crazy. It's weird."
Right.
And so I keep joking with them. We keep saying things like that. I'm like, I'm going to just write this as like testimonies, on my page or bio. But if I get good feedback from them and they're getting good feedback from me, and there's autonomy with it. It's not just do as I say, come in. There's days when I first got here, it was pretty much do what I say. And then as they started to understand the structure and what's needed and what's my expectations, then I start to give a little bit on the rope. And so that they feel they have a say in their progress as well too.
Yeah, no, I love it. A couple of things you said there really stood out. Number one, and I think most coaches get this, but that idea of investing, like the more you invest in your athletes, inherently, like they give more and more back to you. And I don't think people always understand that early on, but that's something I found time and again, is the more you invest in your athletes, the more they're going to give back to you. And just that empathy and that understanding that we're really here for them and to help, kind of guide them and just aid them in this process. That's huge. The other one that you mentioned that I really like, I call it trickle down buy-in, right? But if there's any way you can get the top performers on your team to buy in early, people always look at those people as leaders, right? So if then all of a sudden they see, oh, she's with Vic 6 days a week, well, I'm only going 3. Maybe I should start going 4, 5, 6 days a week. So anytime you're in a team environment, if you can get some of the old heads or the OGs or the top dogs, if you can get them to come in and really buy into what you're doing, it's going to make everything down the line that much easier.
Oh, 100%. And I think I talk a little trash too all the time, actually. And
Yeah.
so, I'll get athletes like, oh, this hurts, this is achy. And I'm like, that's weird. Haven't seen you this week. Like
Right.
tough, or like they're getting kind of pushed around in the paint, or they're getting pushed around as a guard. They're just not quick enough getting the ball stolen. Interesting. Like, you want to see me anytime soon? You want to body? Do you want to body anyone else? Are you getting tired of getting bodied? And they're like, okay, I'll see you.
Right.
And they know I care about them. They know I talk mess, and they know that they can beat me one on one. Pretty much any athlete can probably beat me one on one. I'm horrible at basketball.
Right.
Great defense for sure, but I don't have a jump shot and I'm 5'6", so
Yeah.
really nothing's working for me. But yeah, the trickle down effects, seeing what the captains and seniors are doing and what they have to say, really plays a part. And then for the freshmen, they don't know anything else. So if I can imprint that on them, like that's going to be their expectation for the next 4 years, 5 years, however long they're with me.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I want to dive in deeper. One of the things we talked about up front, and I think really needs to be lasered in on, is this idea that basketball isn't like a lot of other sports, right? And like you said, so many of the kids and the athletes that we're getting now, they are playing, if not year round, pretty darn close to it, right? Like even the high school kids that I get, I'm lucky if we've got 6 weeks where they're really not doing anything else. And as well as I do, it's not like they're just not playing, right? They're in fall league or they're getting individual skill work. So now, the skills development coach is like drooling and like, oh, we're about to get in your bag for 2 hours today. So
Right.
it's really hard, right? It's really
Yeah.
hard to find these times to train. So I would love to hear just from your perspective, what are some of the differences that you see between basketball and these other sports, whether it's, biomechanical and physiological demands, length of season, anything?
Yeah, I think length of season is probably going to be the length of a annual calendar is probably going to be
Yeah.
the biggest difference. And I'm just speaking based off of the sports that I've worked with. I don't, anyone else can chime in or have their opinion.
Yeah.
But you're just going all the time. The breaks are not common. The breaks are maybe a week, 3-4 days, and you're talking about NIL now as well. So you get these higher profile athletes where now it's they're stars, right? And have to go to these outing events and have to do this and have to get pulled away. And it's like, I get it. Get yours. Do what you got to do. But we just lost 2.5 weeks of training and we're coming back out the gate. Like we got these 3 weeks off. We have about 4 days and then we start our 20 hours. And we're going 20 hours till we're done. And we're a quarter system. So we're going to hopefully finish our season in April. We don't end our actual quarter till June 11th.
Yeah.
And then after June 11th, then we start summer school, summer quarter, June 20 something. And then we go June 20 something to August something. And then we're doing it all over again.
Right.
And we have some internationals that go play with their national team. It's awesome. It's just they come back and they're exhausted. So not only talking about physically, we're actually not even getting exposed to adaptations that are higher than the demands. We're just constantly getting game demands over and over and over again.
Right.
But also mentally, you're seeing athletes kind of with severe burnout, in my opinion, of exhaustion from 20 hours to having to go to these events, at Stanford, some of the classes they're taking, like one, I can't even pronounce, and two, I don't know why anybody would take them.
Right.
I'm just like, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And so you're adding that into it. I think Stanford just got put on a list of best schools to attend for postgraduate. So now we're going to get more flux of higher profile, more neuro independent individuals. And it's like, and on top of that, please go lift. So it's like, how can I take away but add at the same time? Or how can I maneuver to make sure that we're at least staying healthy? Like, I think that's the bare minimum, do whatever we can to stay healthy. I know we can't prevent anything. I know we can't make anything certain, but if I know that we're not even getting exposed to any type of weight or any type of external stimulus or moving through full ranges of motion so that we're not doing it for the first time in the game, finding ways around that and finding, ways to navigate through that through the whole year. Um, Whereas let's take soccer, because I think soccer is probably the next best outlier because of how long but short their season is. I think it's crazy that they don't practice in the summer. They don't have summer hours. They just
Yeah.
go to training camp like 2-3 weeks before, and then
They're just right
all
into
right,
it.
see ya.
Yeah.
That's essentially their season. They don't have a summer season. I know, fortunately, at Stanford, half of them are playing on like the Olympic team or USA team. But even, to the strength coach's perspective, like getting in the weight room's tough. Like, when are you doing it? Because now we're in the ACC and we're traveling, so we're leaving about a day and a half, 2 days earlier to get out there, and you just lose a lot. So, credit to her. When I was talking to her a little bit, she's out there on the field and creating circuit training or some type of conditioning session so that they actually do feel stimulus other than getting tackled by the opponent.
Right.
And so, to answer your question in a long-winded answer, I think, the duration of what an actual season looks like and how much they're playing basketball versus how much they're actually like living outside life is just insane. Like, even football, I think, still gets a decent break overall.
Sure.
Baseball, softball, I'm not too familiar with lacrosse. I know they have a similar spring season, but to what extent, like, do they start practicing? To what extent does their actual season look like post their season or even preseason? Is that as intense? How many games are we playing? Football, you play one game a weekend, what is that, like 12 games a year?
Right.
Basketball, we're hoping to play like 40.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just the overall duration of what we're looking at and the practices and, just the demands of it all.
Yeah. So as a strength or performance coach, what are some things that you're doing to help manage that burnout? Because I see it too. Absolutely. I mean, I see it in my pros because I'll have guys now when they go overseas. Some of these guys are reporting August 7th, and I won't see them back until end of May, early June. So you do the math on that. It's like a 6-8 week off season.
Mm-hmm.
And they're out of country for 10 months, right? So what are you doing to manage burnout or just try and help mitigate that and help kind of just keep the kids fresh,
Switching it up in the weight room, and also the coach is going to be probably my best friend with that. She's, as of late, done a great job in regards to kind of reading and engaging the room. There'll be times where I'm switching it up. I'm like, Coach, we're absolutely just burnt out. They're going to give me effort, but mentally they're just somewhere else. So I think one day we played water polo with the staff. From the time we played, we just went to go swim. There are days where I will cancel if our lift is super early. I think we're doing more harm than good. I'll circle back. I'll give an optional day, and 10 out of 10 times everybody's showing up for that. So having trust with that, but also listening to what the coach has to say in regards to that. If she notices it too, just what can we do as a staff to kind of help with it? So practice wise, we'll completely lower the intensity, or we'll just make it a film day, make it something different, just so that we're feeling not burnt out in August, or September, whenever it is, because we do want to play till April. So from that perspective, it's more physical. That way they can have less to think about, or less, what's the word?
Well, it's just less monotony, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the same grind over and over and over. And it's funny. Did you ever see the video of like the Golden State Warriors a couple years ago playing like wiffle ball at practice?
No, I didn't see that.
No, so I'll try and find the video and post it in the show notes, because you're like, okay, it's kind of gimmicky, but also like, dude, how long is the NBA season, right? The grind, being on the road, all the extra games they played over the last 10 years, being the dynasty that they were. So yeah, like just mixing it up, right? And like you said, finding other like novel stimuli to just keep them engaged and switched on, I think really helps. That's awesome.
Definitely. No, in the weight room, we'll do rolls and crawls and just like coordination and sensory motor, orientation. And for some reason, they love that. Like our athletes could not tumble. They just did not know how to move their body. I mean, they're 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah.
So getting them that low, one, was scary, but two, it just kind of re-altered their brain. They felt like kids again. And when I felt like a lift was kind of dragging from the get-go, and everyone's like, "Good morning,"
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like let's bring out the pads. Let's switch it up. Let's switch up our warm up. Let's create contact. Let's hold each other. Whatever it is, the smallest things I think are gonna make the biggest difference. They like it. They buy in. All of a sudden, from a dead weight room, we got to jump in, having fun, good weight room. So if that's 10 minutes out of the lift that I took out and I have to scrap a set or two,
Yeah.
no
It's not a
biggie.
big deal. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. Okay. So I would love to hear the development process a little bit here, because college is different now, right? It's not guaranteed that you're going to have 4 or 5 years. Maybe you have 1 or 2. But I would like to talk about just like the process you've laid out. So let's start very simple. New 17, 18-year-old girl walks on campus, maybe trained a little or maybe not at all. Would you talk to me a little bit about just like what that process is day one with you, and how you kind of get this person accustomed to training and working with you?
Yeah, so actually we do have a freshman right now who has never stepped foot in the weight room. She is
Wow.
six
Okay.
three, just absolutely yoked up, extremely strong on the court, but
Yeah.
could not hold a split squat for longer than maybe 10 seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Came in with severe knee pain, shocker, back pain, shocker, ankles all jacked up, you name it. So first thing I do is actually have one-on-one meetings with each student athlete. So that takes anywhere from 30 to an hour. I'll schedule that. Obviously, I have to say it's optional. It's optional if you'd like to come. Would love for you to come.
Yeah.
So we schedule time, sit down with them. I listen to what they have to say. So what do you want to see? What are your goals in basketball? What are your goals in the weight room? What do you want to work on? What are you bad at? Nutrition as well. And then that kind of gets us talking about what I think they need. Because I can already tell, like the first probably 3 times I see them, like the interaction of what is actually happening. I've also watched film on each athlete with the staff.
Yeah.
So like when I first got there, they sat me down and I watched about 2 hours of film of each athlete. Coaches ran me through what they felt they need. I watched, kind of gave my input on what I thought they needed as well, how we were going to get there, and kind of the duration of how long it's going to take. I think not prefacing that it is a process and that's not going to get done can be misleading at times, because all of a sudden we're 3 weeks in and it's like, why is this athlete not there yet?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, my staff understands and they're like, I know it's going to take a while. She will be your project / your best friend, do what you will.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. So after I kind of had that conversation, watch that film, talk to the athlete, essentially I believe that we're not going to skip any steps. We're going to go through it. If you want to transfer and you don't know how to hang clean, that strength coach can come talk to me, cuss me out. Why didn't you teach her how to hang clean? Hey, she couldn't even hold the body weight squat. Like, there's no way I'm hang cleaning her.
Right.
Period. You can go ahead and have fun with that. So it's a very, very rudiment, very basic progression. How not to use your knees when you jump, how to use your quads and your hamstrings and your calves, how not to let yourself pronate and roll in, how not to just continue to like anteriorly tuck your hips every time you run. She didn't know how to decelerate. I don't know how, like she did not know how to decelerate. She didn't know how to cut. She would just create a circle. And so I was like, all right. So about every other day she came in and we worked separately on acceleration and deceleration work. As simple as just stepping off a box.
Yeah.
And then kind of progressed into like court drills and progressed into like cutting off a screen, setting a screen, rolling off, and just every single day or every other day we're just building, asking the coaches, hey, can I get a coach out here? Can I get a practice player out here to kind of help me out and kind of roll? Because there's no way I'm holding her down. There's no way.
I was going to say, you're not out there just locking her down.
Oh my goodness. She would just boom, trample me. There's no way.
Body.
So from that perspective, from a freshman, and I honestly treat all the freshmen like that. You could tell me you were with a trainer and that's awesome. And I'm sure they did a great job. I just have we probably have different language. We probably have different expectations.
Yes.
So they are on a very rudiment, very basic strength conditioning program that is going to set the foundation for what they need come their sophomore, junior, senior year. Because I need to make sure we move well and we move often. And then from there, when I know I can trust you and I don't have to keep my eyes on you the whole time, then we can kind of progress into other needs. Now, when season comes, that will probably change pending how much time they get on the court.
Yeah.
But, for now, we're just keeping it very simple, very basic. This is also the athlete that said this ish works because her knees stopped hurting. And I was like, it's just crazy. What happens when you don't use the joint? And so, it's been a cool progress, and that buy-in's been awesome. And understanding that we're just going to do basic things very, very well. And honestly, that's exactly what Stanford does from a basketball perspective, which I appreciate. Like every single day they're doing their, I don't know, 10, 20-minute warm up is the exact same thing from a basketball ball handling, passing, shooting standpoint.
Yeah. You got to lay the foundation. And I think maybe the most important takeaway here, regardless of what level you work at, is the fundamentals are important. Building the foundation is important. And just because somebody is a high level basketball player doesn't mean that they move incredibly well, right? So don't assume that just because they can get buckets on the court that they can squat, hinge, split squat, push up the way that we would like. So the way I try and describe that is, look, this is like untapped potential, right? Like you alluded to, if every time she goes in and she does a split squat or a lunge, her pelvis is diving forward, she's over pronating, right? She's getting this massive valgus or IR, whatever you want to call it. Hey man, like if we fix that, not only is that less knee pain in this athlete's case, but on the performance side, now you're building a better set of breaks. So you're going to make them faster coming in and out of those cuts. So I think that's something that's really important, because I think a lot of times when people are working with young basketball players, they assume, oh man, if you're at the top, you're like doing all the cool stuff. It's like, no, just because they're a high level competent mover on the court doesn't mean that they are incredibly competent in the weight room.
Yep. And it's funny because everyone's like, she's so strong, she's so strong. So they're giving her like 50 pounds for bench. And I'm like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, no.
And she literally gets the 20, 25s and is shaking like 8 reps. And I'm just like, and it's very different. And that's A-okay. And there's no need to rush the process, because I'm sure in about a year she'll be touching the 50s.
Absolutely.
Like, but we need to build the foundation. She needs to understand what this feels like, and she's going to be extremely sore tomorrow. So,
yeah,
that
too. Yeah. The first time you do anything new, just respect the fact you will be sore the next day.
Yep.
So never
so
forget
she was
that.
very surprised at that soreness, but it soon subsided, and she was just rocking and rolling. So it's been awesome.
One of the other things that I think is really fun with basketball, and you mentioned this a couple of times now, like they feel good, they're healthy. I think a lot of times when they come in that next day and they're sore, but they're sore in muscles versus joints, right? Or sore in areas they haven't felt sore before, immediately things start to click, right? Because they're used to, oh, I squatted or I did split squats and my knees hurt today, versus, oh, wait, now I feel like my quads or my hamstrings or my glutes. And they start to connect those dots like, oh, wait, this is different than what I've done in the past.
Yep. An athlete who had back pain whenever she did any type of hinge movement, so whether it was tripart deadlift or RDLs, very posteriorly tucked, the back took all the weight.
Yeah, sure.
So we started to implement some of those, when I come in, and she was very nervous and hesitant. And I was like, just trust me, we'll go super light. And she's like, wow, like my back's sore, but it's like the muscles. And I said, weird. And I was like, but how are your glutes? She goes, my glutes are sore too. Why? And I said, so we're using them. That's good. The hamstrings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what you want. She usually gets that pain around that like SI, that pelvis.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, good. So what we're doing is we're actually working the muscles that are being used, designed for that exercise, and now taking away that back pain, and hopefully we can continue to progress. So we're feeling good. And she goes, wow, I didn't know I had muscles back there. I was like, weird, So yeah, to your point, 100%, I think it doesn't click until it clicks. And I will happily let them know that it's clicking,
Yeah.
like that's what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want
it. You don't want to feel that joint pain every time you do a lift, right?
Yeah, correct. That is miserable and painful. I know, trust me.
Yes. Okay. So we talked about working with a freshman. How does the training evolve? Right. So now let's say you do have somebody 2, 3, 4 years down the line. How does that process evolve? How do maybe the programs evolve, or the discussions you're having with the athlete? How does that change?
Very autonomous. So when I'm going in, trying to understand what they need, trying to understand what the coaches need as well. And usually they're on the same track. They're very cerebral here. Like it is, I'll ask the coaches what this athlete needs. I'll ask the athlete what they need, and it's almost on par. So it makes my job a lot easier, and it just becomes more of a niche. I think right now they all need about the same thing in regards to understanding kind of just my philosophy. But when we get into season, we have an athlete, for instance, who has chronic bilateral Achilles tendonitis. Okay, so that's one thing her and I talked about. We want to do our best to mitigate either when that happens or completely overall, working with the AT, working with the physio, because if that's going to be your limiting factor, like that's the last thing we need. So how are we what are we working on, right?
Yeah.
Is it your foot? Is it the way you're pronating? Is it load? Is that a conversation for the coaches? So really just diving into the things that are inhibiting them so that they can continue to progress and improve their ceiling. Because I think we're going to continue touching strength, power. There'll be days where we do like block work, just orientation, different things to kind of mess around with what they're normally comfortable with, but also what
Mhm.
they feel good with. And then what's going to stop them from playing the best basketball that they can play. And so that kind of comes with the collaboration. All of it. That's mainly right now our juniors and seniors, just because I think they've got the best handle on their overall skill set, along with their overall body and their power and their strength. Like I'm not chasing 2 times their body weight back squat. I don't care,
Right.
or front squat, or even trap bar. I don't care if you can
Right.
move bodies and you're quick. We're going to continue to push that.
Yeah.
Um, you feel weak in your upper body and you want to hit arms because you look nice when you hit the 3 and your tricep shows, let's do it. Sure.
Yeah.
But also if you want to go for power and you want to start pushing weight, you want to start pushing people and you're feeling slow, like we can work on that as well. And so that's kind of how it starts to shift. And as I get familiar with these athletes, it's going to be a lot easier for me to determine when that point kind of hits. I know at VCU, I knew right then and there, okay, we need to like switch something up, get you fresh. You're not feeling as good as you want to feel. What does that look like?
Yeah.
I think, these athletes' ceilings right now might be they might be reaching them up quicker than athletes I've worked with prior. And that's amazing. Now I have to kind of be creative in how I'm looking at the process.
Right.
Um, but also they play a lot of basketball. Like our practices from what I've in the past have been like 3 hours in season.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's crazy.
So how, now is that going to be the same thing? We got a new head coach, but similar background. She's been with the previous head coach for 17 years, maybe, I don't know, but I have to figure out a way to adjust, have to figure out conversations that I need to have. What does the season look like? Because that's going to kind of ultimately play around with how we're going to lift. But essentially, I'm targeting what's going to inhibit them from having a full successful season throughout the year.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. It's funny when you were talking about that, kind of made me just think like when I have a young athlete in, right, or somebody that's new to me and my system, I would like to think I do more educating, right? Because I just want to get them like up to speed and we have the same, shared vocabulary and that sort of thing. But the longer I work with somebody, the more the dialogue is 50-50, right? Like I'm still trying to educate them. Hey, here's what I want to get done. Here are the things I think are important. And then they're coming back with, hey, here are the things that I think are important. Here are the things that I want to work on. And so again, they have to kind of earn that trust. And especially because you're working with, 17, 18-year-old kids. I call them kids,
100%.
but they're young, right? And often they don't know what they don't know. But the longer you're with somebody, the more you can start to have this dialogue and discussion versus just telling them kind of what they need to do.
Oh, definitely. And that's not to, negate what we do as a profession. I think probably 80% of the time I will tell them what to do. But
Yeah.
I think season is such a crucial more give than take role,
Yes.
especially with the older athletes. Like I have not played a 40-minute basketball game. I
Yeah.
played staff pickup and I was trashed. Okay. Like my body hurt after.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what you go through daily, right? I'm sure to an extent your tolerance is way higher. But you understanding like squatting's not going to happen today. We played 40 plus minutes, lost a tough game. Everything hurts. Emotionally, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
100%. Like, what do we need to do different? That's not something that's not a hill I'm going to die on. I don't care to die on. If we don't want to squat today, there's step ups, there are split squats, there are leg presses. I mean, I'm a fan of machines. I love machines. I
Yeah.
think they're, undervalued, underused. So it's like, there's so many things that we can alter for you to feel good because when I need you to do something, I know it's going to be done. Because when I'm
Yeah.
like, we're stuck on this, this is going to have to happen. I know it's going to be there.
Yeah. I love it. So something else I love talking to basketball coaches about is some of these problem areas, right? So we talk about Achilles and calves, knees, back. Obviously, these are things you're thinking about as well. Do you have any like favorite go-to exercises or things when you're like, oh, my knee's bugging me? Do you have any specific exercise or things you're thinking about to try and help those athletes move and feel better?
Yes. We've actually used, you can use any band, I think those thick green bands, but we have these super bands. We wrap around the rack, and I call them the super band circuit.
Yep.
And so they will hold wall split or wall squat kind of right at 90. They'll hold that for
Yep.
about 20 seconds. Then they go into about 20-second pulses. Then they go into a split stance where that front leg is driving over that toe and that
Mm-hmm.
back leg is just holding it. They hold that for 20 seconds, 10-second pulses, split. They repeat that 3 times. And
Whew.
I mean,
They're
it is
cooking.
nasty.
They're cooking.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
nasty. I mean, they'll come in and they do this on their own. Or if they come in and they're like, hey, my knees are aching, I'm like, go to super band, you hear one of those, but once they're done, they're like, oh, it feels great.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the recipe for success, but they come in, they do it daily, and it's been such a help for me and overall longevity of, their knees.
Yeah.
A lot of the polish, I want to say it's polish boxes,
Mhm.
those rounded ones where they're jumping
Oh yeah.
side to side. Played around with those. We don't have those boxes. We just kind of have the slant boards.
Yep.
And so just accumulating 2 minutes. So like whether it's 20-second intervals, 30-second intervals of just straight tendons back and forth, up and down, different directions has been
Yep.
great as well. I think that first week they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to blow me up. And then after that, they're like, this feels amazing.
Yeah.
Foot feels good. They like the way that their foot feels on the like rigid surfaces. Plus their ankles feel good. The tendons feel good. So overall win. I think those are the two biggest right now bangs for my buck that are just super easy, super quick, and I know they work.
Yes. It's funny you mention the jumps because Jay DeMeo and I, this is something we just talked about recently, is like the power of extensive jumps, right? And I think everybody loves the big box jumps, right? The ones on IG or TikTok, and people are like basically their butt is on their calves when they land, but it looks awesome.
Right.
But you miss out on the extensive jumps, right? And like you alluded to, I don't know, it sounds like you're maybe doing it barefoot, like getting all those different foot and ankle positions, unlocking the feet and ankles, because they spend so much time in basketball shoes, right? Which
Oh
are
yeah.
meant to basically be concrete and make you stop and explosive. But man, getting out of that and getting the foot and ankle complex to move, loading that calf and Achilles and foot in different positions, super powerful.
Oh yeah. I think at first they're more like, why are we doing this? This is so painful. Oh my gosh, this is so
Right.
long. And then next thing you know, the next week they're like, can I just do this on my own? I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
100%. Just that jump, like it said, like the tendon just needs to be low. The tendon needs to be used, especially before we go into a very rigorous season. We're obviously not going to do this, you know, come January when they're probably getting exposed to that many jumps. But just understanding that and reaping the benefits of what we can when we do it. I also love jumping on like up a hill.
Oh,
Got
okay.
that from Speed Sprint. Dan,
Okay.
I'm blanking on his name, but
Okay.
he put out this program, like this sprint profiling summer program, and
Yeah.
on it had jumps on incline.
Okay.
And I tried it. I loved it. The athletes love it. We're going forward. We're going backwards. We're going lateral. I think we go like 2 sets of 10 yards for each
Yeah.
way. Really enjoyed it. They enjoy it. Feels good after too. First,
Yeah.
you're kind of just like trying to understand how to like move in that direction and to orient so that both your feet are clicking at the same time and you don't look like you're, you know, Dorothy hitting your feet together. But it's pretty good. We use it pretty much twice a week before our
Okay.
lifts, kind of get them primed and prepped and ready to go.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to try that in that super band circuit too. That sounds
Oh yeah,
extra spicy because I've done Spanish squats, but I've not done it with the pulse, and I've not added in the split squat afterwards. That sounds awful, but
the
like in the
pulse.
best possible way, right?
Yes, when I first introduced it, we don't go straight into it. So when I first introduced it, we go Spanish squat into the pulse,
Mm-hmm.
break, split, and then we'll start off with 10-second ISO and then 10 pulse
Yeah, yeah.
flip
And
sides.
work up to
And
it.
then as they start to get better though, or start to get used to the burn, we'll work up to more time and then increase on the reps. But
Ooh.
normally 2 to start and then 3 is my max.
So spicy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that out on myself
Yep.
first. That's kind of always
Yeah,
the rule. Try it on yourself first.
that's exactly what I did, and I was like, "Holy cow!" And that's how I knew. I was like, I can't do this back to back. Like for these athletes, they'll get burned. No way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's great. It feels phenomenal.
I love it. I love it. Okay, one more and then we'll start to wrap up. And I think this was a bigger issue 20 years ago, right? And I think it was also how we were approaching strength and conditioning. But years ago, we used to always say, "Oh man, basketball players they just don't love the weight room," right? And I spent a lot of time in soccer too, and it was the same kind of thing. Like there's this cultural battle of they don't love the weight room. I don't know if I see it as much now, especially with people such as yourself who have taken a little bit more modern approach, if you will, and it's not
Mm.
just banging weights. But I would love to hear kind of your thoughts, especially at the Division I level. How are you going about building a culture in your weight room and with your women's basketball players to make sure that they want to come and see you, like you alluded to, 6, 7 days a week?
I think it's interesting. I knew this was going to come up, and I was going to have an answer, and I actually never came up with an answer simply because I just hope that at first I create a very structured weight room. I was always told if my mentor ever walked in, you want to make sure that they're proud of what you're running, and so that's
Yeah.
kind of how I run a weight room. So everything's pretty on the dot. We're gonna do it like this. We're gonna do it like this. Make sure everything's rolling, which works really well with sports who love organized, structured things, such as softball. Softball really gravitate towards it. Volleyball really loved it. Basketball, it's been an adjustment. I
Mm.
think at first it's almost kind of like, why are we doing this? Like, I want to go on my time. And so a lot of it, like you spoke before, is education. Hey, we're going to do things really well. This is no different than what we do on the court. We're going to do it as a team. We're going to make sure everyone's on the same page. You're not leaving your teammates behind. I've even gone as far as when I create, rack assignments or I have certain people paired up, like you cannot move on to the next series without your partner because you're going to be counting for your partner. So you can't just leave them out in the dust,
Yeah.
and so that was even an adjustment and creating, what the coach wants from the court onto the weight room. And then I want to say it's, maybe my presence, it's the way I get excited for them when we do certain things. Maybe it's the new exercises they're doing, or even challenges that is coming up that they enjoy. And then we kind of progress forward. And then from there, they kind of just come into the weight room and enjoy doing what we've always done. It helps to see results. I know there'll be times where I'm focused over here and all of a sudden I see someone in the mirror, just, flexing like they're
Yeah.
Arnold. And I'm like, sure, definitely
Love it.
looking good. But also feeding their egos a bit, like, okay, is that a quad I see? Is that, look at the
Yes.
hamstring? Like just, it's a lot of give and take. I can't, in my head, I think they absolutely love it, but I'm sure given the option, sometimes, they're just like, I'm not coming in until 10 instead of 7:30 or whatever the time we come
Yeah.
in is at. And I'm sure there's days where they're like, I don't want to be here, but I know I have to because I understand what would come from it.
Yes.
But I think it's just the way we do things or the way I like things done. I think it's gravitated towards the athletes I've worked with and they've appreciated the structure. Maybe my fit isn't a fit somewhere else and that's okay. But from everywhere I've been, it's more of understanding like she's very detailed. She is going to do and ask us to do the same thing over and over again. And once we perfect that, we're going to move on into something else. And so they know that because that's one thing they've said. They're like, you love details. And I'm like, because
Yes.
details matter. And they're like,
Yeah.
they do,
Yep.
and they buy into that as well. So to answer your question, long-winded again, I think it's just how we do things. I think it's going to take time. I don't think they love it out the gate. I think, actually, I know at first they thought I was very militant, couldn't crack a joke, a very, hard ass, if you will. And I
Yeah.
was like, no, that's just my interview face. But, once I get rolling and once I start talking to them, cracking jokes here and there or relating to whatever music is coming out, kind of helps that buy-in process as well.
Yeah. And I think you've mentioned details a couple times. So important, especially the higher you go. And I think the more people appreciate that, when you're just training middle or high school age kids, like the goal is to make training fun, to make them want to come back, like, hey, just make it fun and engaging. But the higher levels you go, the more you realize, hey, if you're working with a women's basketball player at Stanford, if you're working with somebody who wants to play in the WNBA, like all those little details in their shot matter, right? So it makes sense to them. And that's always an analogy I use, right? Like, hey, where you have your hand position on a ball, how you follow through, all those details are important when you shoot, right? Okay. So it's the same thing when you're in the gym. what your foot position is like, where your knee is tracking. Like all those things are important if you want to move well. And so helping them
Yep.
understand that, it's like all of a sudden I find a lot of times the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, one thing I realized when I got to Stanford is I asked, so why are you guys so successful? I love asking questions. I love understanding the thought process behind, what comes from a coaching and athlete perspective. And I had one of the athletes tell me, they're like, we just cared so much about the details. Like we knew the other teams play better than they did. We knew when they ran it wrong. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how
That's
cerebral
impressive.
and in depth they are, and that's just how much film they watch. And so understanding that they can do that there, we're gonna do in the weight room as well. And I also have to be mindful of like, it's not we're not Stanford sports performance. We're Stanford women's basketball. So like when I need to pull off of that, because I can't just, as detailed as we are, they're gonna hammer the basics. It's amazing. They're gonna get mentally fatigued. Like when I need to recognize when that point is, and I need to kind of not be so stern on certain things as much as I would be on, normally.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Big question time. If you
All
could
right.
alter the space-time continuum and give young Victoria Saucedo one piece of advice, what would it be?
You're exactly where you need to be.
I like it.
I think there were so many times where I wish I was at a different spot, or maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have not got into the profession. Just so many thoughts of like not understanding the process of it all.
Yeah.
Whether it's, me getting let go awake, or me having 5 sports and just being extremely overwhelmed, or working football and scratching my head like, what's going on here? Or even at Utah State, I think Utah State put me on this path. If I hadn't gone there, I don't know if I would have been in strength conditioning. I just loved the weight room and the strength coach and the culture that was involved there. And I think just trust the process, and like, it might not make sense right now, but even for me currently, like just be in the moment, trust the process. Everything is going to work out, or it's not going to work out, but that's how it's supposed to work out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so just allowing me to stay in that moment, because sometimes I just I look too far ahead and I forget where I'm at.
Yeah. I think that's pretty normal, right? I think that's normal, especially when you're younger. It's like, you know, patience hasn't fully formed. And I would like to admit, I would like to say that I've got that fully figured out in my mid 40s, and I do not. It's like, it's hard. It's hard. But like you said, having that ability to step back and just realize, hey, I'm in a great spot. I'm learning. I'm getting better every day. And whatever needs to happen will happen, But just
Yep.
like you said, it's kind of cliche, but trusting the process is super important.
Oh yeah. And one thing that I've read, I forgot when, and it said, life's a marathon, but it's a bunch of like sprints in the
Yes.
marathon. And
Yes.
so when you have that ability to go and go as
Yes.
hard as you can. And when you need to back off, back off.
Yeah.
But you're still going. You just got to
Yeah.
back off. And then
Yeah.
when you get that ability to sprint again, take off.
Yeah. I
And
love
so
it.
it's been huge.
I love it. Okay. Last but not least, we've got our lightning round. So 4
All
fairly
right.
short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like.
Okay.
Number 1, talk to me about that Europe trip. It looked amazing.
It was amazing. We went to Rome, Florence, and Venice. And the history, the art, the culture was just insane. That was fortunately my third time in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was my first time in Rome and Florence, and it was just breathtaking. I mean, Florence, the streets were filled with vendors, the shopping, the art. I didn't realize David was like 100 feet tall. I thought he was maybe 8 feet tall, and just the history behind it, how it only took the Rome 8 years to build the Colosseum was mind blowing.
Yeah. I didn't know
You know,
that.
it takes like 8 years for the 10 to not be backed up, but that's fine. Like
Right.
modern technology.
Yeah.
But just I love learning the history and culture of it all, and it was just amazing. We won 3 games. That helps too, with no air conditioned
Oof.
gyms.
Yeah.
Talk about adversity, mental toughness. They were like, "It's hot," and I'm like, "Shut up, just run.
You'll be
um,
fine.
you'll be fine." I'm like mopping down their sweat and like chasing
Yes.
after them so they don't slip. But they did phenomenal. They had a good time. It was nice to get exposed to the team in an outside setting, and really get familiar. And get to bond with people that I don't normally bond with because all they know is, the work side. So it was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, number 2, we talked about softball. Your best college softball game was?
Like personally or my favorite?
Oh, you can give me either or both.
Um, a top softball moment for me. I actually don't even know. I think we lost, but we played BYU at home my senior year.
Okay.
And nobody can stand BYU in the state of Utah. I mean, maybe even the state, even outside of Utah, like no one can stand them. And they've just been longtime rivals. I don't think we beat them for a while, and they were tough opponent. The pitcher was phenomenal. The crowd, biggest crowd we had. We were doing great that year, and I just remember like looking around and being like, "Wow, we created this. Like we created people coming out for a great game." I think we went to extras and lost, but like it was just a very surreal moment because when I first got there my freshman year, we had 3 fans, and they were all like the head coach's family. You know what I mean? Like
oh my gosh.
It was tough. And then my senior year, fortunately, we started to get successful, brought in great recruits, did really well. And I mean, we had a stadium packed full, and it was amazing.
Yeah, no, that's sick. Okay, number 3. Does anything compare to SoCal weather?
NorCal weather.
Really? Yeah, because you're NorCal now, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it's a little cooler. Like right now, like this week it's gonna be high of 75s. I love it. But LA has gone through a heat wave, I think. But honestly, nothing compares. I love this weather. Love California. Nothing beats California. Obviously, the price is different conversation.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
But location, things to do, where everything's at. I mean, you're by the ocean, you're by the mountains, you're by the desert, you're by the redwoods. Like it's unbeatable. It's amazing.
It's hard to beat. Yeah, and like you said, you've kind of done a tour, right? Like you said, just migrated east and then came all the way back, right?
Yep, went all the way. I think I went as far east as I possibly can go.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, that was fun. And I made the trek back, which was ended up driving back. It was about 4 days. Through the Midwest, let me tell you, Oklahoma, nothing there.
No, it's as flat as it gets.
Yeah, insane. Yeah, it's almost like the end of the world. It's just flat. Like I understand why people think the world is flat. Like it's just dead.
Yeah, it's so funny. I drove through there when I was in like 8th grade. My dad and I and some of his students, we were driving through there, and I was like, this is the most boring state I've ever driven through. Shout out. 100%. If you live in Oklahoma, we don't hate you. I'm just saying you have a very flat state.
Yeah,
even worse than Indiana.
Yeah. The best thing they have right now, I think, is softball there. So,
it is what it is, man.
Correct.
Okay. Last but not least, number 4. What's next for Victoria Saucedo? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Anything?
I'm excited for the season. I'm really excited for how it goes. I think there's a lot of new in this program, but a lot of the similar things in regards to staffing. I'm excited to. I know I'm going to have to change some training around and philosophy just based off of what I saw in summer, and that's fine. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how creative I'm going to get and what this season's going to look like when we're traveling in the ACC, because we're going to have to lift out in someone else's facility. We're going to have to figure out planning and travel and how we're going to accommodate to time change and things like that. So I'm actually really excited for this. I'm excited for the challenge and the creativity that's going to come.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Victoria, this has been amazing. I appreciate you getting up early, having the coffee, and delivering just killer show today, man. So where can my listeners find out more about you and the great work that you're doing?
Well, I appreciate it. I really got my mind jogging at 6 a.m. I love it. It's when I do my best work.
Yes.
You can find me on pretty much any social platform, Twitter, X, Instagram. Those are the only platforms. I have a Facebook, but that's for my grandma.
Yes.
TikTok's strictly for just browsing and clearing my mind on occasion. But through there, you can reach me. Yep. X and IG. Pretty sure my email is on Stanford website, and then phone number if you need me that bad.
Yeah. No, I'll make sure I get those links in the show notes so you guys can connect and follow Vic. And man, again, Victoria, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.